Get
Good
away.
afternoon. Hope everyone is healthy and safe out there. Welcome to the Last Dance Special Edition here on ATL Prime Sports, brought to you by the Association of Professional Ball Players of America. I'm Todd Corder, coming to you live from the ATL. I have a special guest, Deshaun Tate, a prep, NBA, and NCAA college basketball insider. When it comes to hoops, I go to him. My friend Deshaun, welcome to ATL Prime Sports.
Man, TC, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate all of the recognition and the kind gesture, the compliment, and just the entire nine, the whole acknowledgement. I ain't got no money to send you, brother, so I hope I wasn't getting all that for a little chunk of change, bro. Because if I send you a check, I can almost guarantee you it's gonna bounce, man. Other than that, I'm thankful for you to have me on, man. I was looking forward to this all week.
I've been looking forward to a long time too, man. You know, The Last Dance is a documentary about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. You know, the Bulls in the 80s, they were the up-and-coming team. The Pistons, they weren't an up-and-coming team until they won it all in the late 80s, and they should have been a three-peat instead of a two-peat, and we'll get to that later. And, you know, I've got to go right to it. After the first and second episode, Deshaun, what was Tate's biggest take on The Last Dance from the first two episodes, 1 and 2, because we didn't have a chance to talk about that?
Yeah, I was a couple things kind of stood out to me. I mean, a lot of this stuff, even with 3 and 4 included, I kind of knew already by hearing, you know, through word of mouth already prior to with some of the stuff that was already kind of going on and everything like that. And even read up on it quite a bit even. But, you know, there was a one time when Michael Jordan was making a drug room story reference, talking about how it was his rookie year, it was preseason. Practically, you know, the whole team was involved and they were doing things in the hotel room that he had never seen before in his life, talking about lines and marijuana and women. And that just kind of led into, you know, transition into his devotion for basketball. I don't know. I think that was I wasn't sure how I felt about that in regards to kind of seemed like he was throwing some of his teammates or whatnot under the bus maybe a little bit. But, you know, there were so many other things where, you know, there were people talking about, you know, this guy's 6'6", you know, how much can he really do to impact the game? And I think that's another large part about Michael Jordan and him being the greatest of all time because he's 6'6", he's the average probably height of an NBA player at that time. And it's not like he was, you know, a Wilt or, you know, a Bill Russell or a Shaquille O'Neal, somebody that's just so physically dominant, a LeBron James or anything like that. The skill set spoke more so than anything. You know, I remember Walt Frazier said, well, he's not 7 feet tall, so he cannot, you know, possibly carry a team. Mark Eaton, one of the biggest players to ever play in the NBA, saying there's no such thing as a one-man team in the NBA, so we cannot realistically expect one man to turn an organization around all by themselves. Both of those things turned out not to be true. So those are just a couple little bullet points and things. I mean, I have so much. I have a ton of it, so I guess that's what this platform is for. But those are certainly a couple of things that probably stuck out to me like a sore thumb more than anything else.
Wow, I thought we were going to start the Howard Stern show instead of ATL Prime Sports in the beginning there. But I'm glad we moved away from that. You know what? It is true, though. It did stick out in my mind when I saw that when he knocked on the door and they said, "Who is it?" He said, "MJ." And they let the rookie in the door, and the wide-eyed rookie looked at all that stuff that you just mentioned and said, "I'm out of here." That just told you about Michael Jordan's upbringing from his parents and his family upbringing right away. That right there was one of my takes from what you said. My biggest take, though, and this please tell. Well, I guess I can compare it happening today a little bit. You know, Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Bulls, and the GM, Jerry Krause at the time, who unfortunately has passed away, rest in peace, he decided that he was going to go ahead and destroy and restart and reboot a 6-time NBA champion with 2 3-peats, decided he wanted to bring in his coach, Tim Floyd, from Iowa State at the time, and tell Phil Jackson, see you later. The season before that, before their last season in 97 and 98, 96 and 97, he tried to actually get rid of Phil Jackson. And I thought, man alive, I just remember it like the back of my hand from 5 minutes ago. I'm like, please tell me somebody on the Bulls has some common sense to tell Jerry Krause to stop doing it. Come from ownership. And finally, they came to their senses. Phil got to go and coach the last season, but he told them, this is it. This is it. Michael, you can still come back next year. We'll retool a little bit the team around you. But Phil Jackson's not coming back. Michael said, well, I'm not playing for any other coach. Even though he loved his coach before that, Doug Collins. He said him and Doug Collins were tight. And, he was the best. And I remember they even kissed each other. So on the cheek, of course. And so Deshaun, my point was right. Of course, my point was no way would any sports organization today allow a GM, Jerry Krause, who's done a great job, by the way, done a great job building the Bulls, except he didn't draft Michael Jordan, but he built the rest of the team with Pippen, and he brought in some free agents and so on and so forth. My take was that they called him Crumbs because he left food all over himself, Jerry Krause, when he ate. I thought that was hilarious, by the way. Let him break up a 6-time NBA champion, 2 3-peat. That was my biggest take. What do you think from that?
That was obviously a very interesting, point of it as well. I mean, for anybody who can do what Krause did in regards to being able to manage the talent, the egos that come with it, the popularity that comes with it. I mean, just all the different personalities. We talked about Dennis Rodman, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. I mean, there's just so many names that, have been put with this whole thing, to be able to manage all of that and keep all of that together, let alone still trying to press forward as defending champs, to be able to handle all of that. Because with more championships and more winning comes more egotistical, mentalities and so many different things. I thought that was even a bigger part. And that's why I do give a lot of credit, and not trying to get off topic here, but that's why I also like to look at things from a different perspective. Even Coach Calipari, who kind of deals with some of the same similar things on a collegiate level. And I know that Duke does too. But Duke still yet recruits certain kinds of guys yet still. And Kentucky is just a little bit more different. Guys come from a little bit different backgrounds, little different edge to them and things like that. But it kind of reminds me of that very much. And everybody talks about, Michael Jordan and so forth. And while that's all fine and dandy, this is more so built around the Chicago Bulls. I love everything they put in place to where we can learn more about, Phil Jackson, obviously. And I know we haven't gotten into episodes 3 and 4 just yet, but just the ability that we had, or the access that we had to be able to learn about Phil Jackson and the acid. And I'm a little bit, I feel my own way about not getting a little bit more B-roll of Dennis Rodman's 48+ hour vacation to Las Vegas. But I guess I can deal with not getting a little bit more information on that. But the things that I loved about Michael, is that he came right out the gate as a rookie, understanding that he really didn't have a voice in the locker room. And, saying that he's going after the best player. He's going after the captain on the team. Boom, right out of the gate. And also mentioning that, the transition from college to the NBA has been, quote unquote, pretty easy. I like the way that he kind of put that, because that goes to show exactly what he made it look like for the generation that wasn't able to watch him play. I've been graced and blessed, obviously, with the opportunity to see him play in person as well as on the television, obviously. But I feel like this documentary has been more so put together to not only necessarily to remind us as to how great that he was, but more so to educate, to not only re-educate us, but to also educate for many first timers being, the new generation that there is today. But, Michael certainly, always held his players and his teammates accountable. And on top of that, one of the biggest life lessons that we can learn, especially professionals, whether it's in basketball or anything else, he said, always play the game to win. I do understand that there was a 14-minute restriction that ultimately led the Bulls to advance to the playoffs. But the main key point to hammer home is to compete at the highest level always, which is to win. And felt that the front office violated the most important aspect of the game, which is why they play it. And that makes for a really good point. The relationship was never the same after that, obviously the head coach at the time wasn't willing to sacrifice, risking losing his job. And Michael didn't care about that. He just wanted to play the game to win. And I think that we can all kind of attest to that in our own individual lives. We're all playing this game of life to ultimately win.
My friend, that was well said. I was thinking about that too. I was going to mention it. You beat me to it. Yes, he decided the hell with my health. I'm getting on the court. I'm not doing it halfway. I'm going for it, and we want to get to the playoffs, and I'll see how far I can carry this team, because believe me, he was carrying them. We'll fast forward here, and let's go to our favorite time of it. I know it's mine, and I'm sure it's yours. What are your thoughts?
Bad boys.
Exactly. What is your thoughts about the Pistons-Bulls rivalry while watching the documentary? Because you and I are from the state of Michigan. I'm a little bit older than you. I saw it at the end of my college years, and I saw it while I was working my first jobs after college. So I remember it like yesterday. What was it like from your perspective while watching it?
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, obviously, I grew up a big fan of the Bad Boy Pistons, but, and the crazy part about it is I was never a Chicago Bulls hater the same way that a lot of other people were. I just knew who my favorite team was. In that same breath, I also knew that the best player on the floor did not play in a Pistons uniform. So that made it interesting for me in my youth, and obviously as I've grown to be much older now. But the part about it being that the style of play that the Pistons played with, I absolutely have always loved the physicality. Some of the stuff I can kind of do without, but for the most part, I've always been a huge advocate for physical basketball because it teaches you so many life lessons about what life will throw at you outside of basketball and how you go about handling it. I mean, we can all, again, going back to the life thing, that, sometimes people are going to make things difficult and hard for us intentionally in life. At every job, it almost kind of feels like or seems like sometimes. But you have to find a certain amount of maturity, a maturation process, and growth within yourself to go back to the drawing board, to get in the weight room, to get you in your tight circle, your close-knit circle together, to come together and overcome adversity, so to speak. So I thought that was, really awesome within itself. Now, the one thing I didn't love, and I don't know if you were going to get, I don't want to move too far ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
In regards to deciding not to shake hands at the end of a game. Here's my stance.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that personally. I really am okay with that if that's the case. People, I think, oversell sportsmanship and all this other type of stuff. If you don't really sincerely mean good game, then why shake hands with someone and say good game because you have to? Now, I understand the team was bitter. A lot came with that, being the fact that they were swept literally off of the floor. However, if you're going to do it, don't do it in the way that Isaiah Thomas did it. It seemed almost as if, as he's walking out the floor and following Lambeer and some of his other teammates, it looked as if he was ducking out. I remember that. Like, they keep playing it over and over, and it looks like he was ducking out of there. Don't duck out. You're going to walk off the floor. But other than that, I was actually okay.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because that bobbing and weaving and shucking, if you're just going to walk out, just walk out and don't do it. You're so right. And me, honestly, it was no big deal that they did it, because I remember the Celtics, they walked off the floor when Detroit beat them, except for when, Zeke, they called Isaiah Zeke back then, grabbed forward Kevin McHale, and they braced, and Kevin McHale said, go win it. And then I remember Larry Bird said, hey, the Celtics didn't shake hands with the Lakers when they beat the Lakers in the finals in the 80s. They didn't shake hands. I mean, this has kind of been a thing that has been going on a long time in the NBA. Now, today they shake hands. And Michael Jordan, with his family upbringing, was be a good sport, shake hands when you lose, congratulate the other team, and have fun. And I listened to John Sally's take, and I want to hear what you think of this. I'll say it real quick. John Sally wanted to go back into the game. He asked Chuck Daly to let him back in, and Chuck did, because he wanted to shake the Bulls players' hands and thank them. Dumars did too. And I think Dennis Rodman did. So those three players decided to go ahead. It was Rodman or James Edwards. I can't remember the last. Maybe each of them did. But I remember they shook the Bulls players' hands. And that shucking and jiving and weaving, that wasn't the way to do it. You're right. What are your thoughts on the other Detroit players who were in the game decided to shake their hand? What do you think of that sequence there? And what the Lakers and the Celtics did prior?
Well, I'm okay with the fact that, like I said, if players didn't want to shake hands, I'm also okay with if players did want to shake hands, because that's their own personal right to be able to do that. Now, if someone's gonna go and say, that we come in together, we go out together, and if we're all deciding to walk off the floor at the same time, then that's what it's going to be. I know John Sally said he didn't, really want to go about it that way, or whatever the case may be, and that's a conversation amongst them themselves. But I think every person should have, their own right to be able to do whatever it is that they, wanted to do. So from that standpoint, I guess I'm okay with the fact they wanted to do that if that's what it came down to. However, the same type deal when it comes to Lakers, Celtics, or anything else. It's the exact same way. If someone doesn't want to, of course, because one team was, quote, being considered the bad boys and the other team was just considered Celtics or Lakers or Bulls or whomever, right. Which also reminds me that, and I'm not going to say that Michael Jordan wouldn't have done this, because sure, he probably would have. But Michael Jordan was never faced to be in that position where he was a defending champion and someone beat him.
Right.
He's always, won a championship and followed it up by winning another championship, or either that or he followed it up by retirement. So we never saw that from him before. But, and that shows that things are a little bit different when you're a champion. And that's not an excuse, to say that players should be able or shouldn't be able to walk off the floor. But I'll just say enough to say that I think it should be left up to every individual person. I'm not mad at anybody for shaking. I'm not mad at anybody for not shaking if it's really not sincere.
Exactly. And these teams, look, there was a lot of bad blood. Jordan despised the Pistons. He still despises them today. And, would have the Bulls gone on and won 6 championships in the 90s without their series with the Pistons, because the Pistons had to knock off the Celtics and then knock off the Lakers, where the Bulls had to knock off the Pistons and they beat a Lakers team that was on a little bit of the downside. They weren't as good. Though those teams weren't as good as Detroit having to beat the Lakers in the late 80s. So Boston, the Bulls had to get by the Pistons, and the Pistons had to get by the Celtics, and like I said, the Lakers. Would have they been as good? Because I don't think the Bulls needed the Pistons to be good, or they wouldn't have won it 6 times. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. Everybody has to overcome some sort of adversity, and everybody has to beat out someone else who had their number for so many years and so forth. I like to think that that's typically how things, kind of go. But that goes to show and speaks volume for, when you get to that level, that's when you know that you made it, and it means that much more. I'm a big believer in things that mean that much more. That's just like to say, if I gave you, TC, $100, and you take that in comparison versus if you went out and worked for $100. And no guarantees, of course, but you might spend that $100 differently, and you might cherish and value the $100 differently that you worked for versus the one that I gave you, because you worked hard for it. It has a different meaning to it, So I do like to think that, when you overcome something, and you finally get the opportunity to beat one of your arch rivals or nemesis, that it means something a little bit different. It means a little bit more.
Well, and guess what? The Pistons, they had the Jordan rules, and to me, those were the Pistons rules designed to stop MJ. To me, those rules were make MJ go to his left, even though he was spectacular each way, and when he forced him to the middle, so we can knock him on his keister. Those were the rules to me. What else were the rules to you? Because there was other stuff besides that.
Say that again one more time.
Well, I said the Jordan rules to the Pistons were designed to stop Jordan at that time before they got, till Pippen became a superstar. So to me, the rules were pretty simple. Force Jordan to go to his left, even though he was spectacular each way, but make him go to his left so he'd go in the middle of the floor, and then we just knock him on his keister. So to me, the Jordan rules were more than that. And as a Pistons fan, explain that to the audience.
Well, I think more so it was, we like to look at this thing being considered so much about, consider the Jordan rules being about Jordan, when it was indeed a little bit more than that. I think a lot of it was designed around the players that surrounded him. And, I don't think that they had the mentality of, if we beat Jordan, then we don't have to worry about anybody else. And so you saw that with the way that they also defended the opposition that surrounded Michael Jordan. And this is a perfect example. We've all heard of the term or the saying, you kill the head and the body will follow. And so while that may have been very true for them, they still knew they were a very smart team. People don't love the Pistons. They're a love them or hate them type. There's no gray area. There's no middle.
Right.
So
like the Patriots.
Exactly. There you go. So from that standpoint, you have to consider the fact that they were out for blood against all of them. It wasn't just Michael Jordan, and they were successful in a lot of different ways. But they also helped make Michael Jordan the Michael Jordan that we know for him to be today. So I think that there was still multiple pieces that was there and it surrounded Michael Jordan. It wasn't just Michael Jordan. It was also about, out coaching Phil Jackson. It was also about, shutting down some of the other players, the John Paxsons, the BJ Armstrongs, not just Scottie Pippen all the time. So that's more so when I look at the Jordan rules, I think it surrounded more than just Michael Jordan. It was all across the board, even guys that weren't in uniforms, as I alluded to before, the guys on the sideline walking up and down with suits on. It was even about getting inside of the minds of the head coach.
It's very true. I agree with all that. There's no doubt about it. We talked about Jordan being the greatest player, but us as Pistons fans and the bad boys, to me, Isaiah Thomas, he's the second best point guard ever behind Magic. And he's the only one that defeated Jordan, Bird, and Magic in the playoffs. The only one to do it. He was so great, Isaiah. And to me, he had the best quarter of, I said this last night on ATL Prime Sports to conclude the show, that, he had the best quarter in the history of basketball in Game 6 of the 1988 Finals when he scored 25 points in a quarter versus the Lakers on an ankle he had no business being out there. Every shot he took, it hurt. Every pass he made, every dribble he made, it hurt. And let's face it, that Pistons team to me, I honestly think it was just as good, if not better, than the 89 and 90 teams that won it all. And they would have won it if it wasn't for that. And I'm still mad about it today, believe it or not, that phantom foul on Bill Laimbeer on Premier Bar going by the sky hook. It was a three-peat, and they would have talked about this Game 6 even more for Isaiah. And I think it was the best quarter in history. What do you think of all that I said?
I can see that. The crazy thing about it is it kind of got me reflecting back now, just the rampage that Isaiah went on at that time where he's, limping and gimpy and walking around on, pretty much just playing on one leg. It was one of the best performances I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I think that the consensus, the majority would probably agree with me, when I say that. And they certainly were just as good of a team, if not better than the teams that, the bad boy teams that won the championship in 89 and 90. And they could have potentially, went on and won some more. I think they kept that unit together. I do understand that they were getting a little bit more elderly at that time. But, when you're looking at that team in general, all the pieces that they had there, it wasn't even just about the Isaiah Thomas. I mean, you had your John Sally, you had your, I like to call him the handlebar, Big Buddha. Up there, I used to love what Buddha brought to the table. Not just a physical guy, but just very, very strong. And at the time where Dennis Rodman was just not considered what everybody saw him as when he was a Bull, as a rebounder, and just get second chance points and hustle points and second effort on the floor. I mean, this is a guy that was a scorer for the Detroit Pistons at that time. So, when you consider all of those things, you have to certainly implement all of the pieces around them outside of just looking at Isaiah and how good that team was in comparison to the ones that actually did win the championship.
I tell you what, I went to Game 5 in the Pontiac Silverdome when there were 80,000 there. I went, I got my ticket, and at Amoco gas station, I filled up my tank. It was $8. I went inside the Amoco, and they handed me 2 NBA tickets for $16 and call it a day. There's no way in God's world that would happen today. But I tell you, that's exactly what I did. I filled it up at an Amoco on Fenton Road in Flint, Michigan, where I'm from, and went inside and got 2 tickets for the finals for $8 a piece. All the requirement was that I had to fill it up. It was nosebleed. I was far back, but I had great eyes. I could see everything. And it was the most spectacular sporting event I've ever been to. And I've been to quite a few in my lifetime. That's the most spectacular. And Isaiah, he didn't get his justice, I think walking off that floor, like you said, shucking really hurt him. And then Jordan, he's such a competitor. And I have that streak in me when I'm playing. I'm not like Jordan. I'm not trying to compare that, but I have that, I still get kicked off if I lose games from a while down the road. And that's what he is. He's still ticked off at the Pistons today. And he's so ticked off that when he's talking like it happened 5 minutes ago. And I've got to ask you this, because I don't think Jordan did this. But, Jordan was still upset with Isaiah. But, Isaiah Thomas getting left off the dream team, was Michael Jordan the real reason, in your opinion?
You know what? There's so many pieces to that I'm unsure about. That honestly, I don't know. Obviously, at that time, I'm not even 10 years old yet at that moment. As far as what I think right now, I won't go as far as to say that Michael Jordan was the reason that Isaiah was left off, but I think that he had something to do with the reason behind why Isaiah was left off. There's no way when you're looking at that roster that, by the way, I have no idea as to why it included Christian Laettner, but to have some of the players on that team, not that they were all bad players, but just the thought that Christian Laettner has a roster spot on the 92 Dream Team and Isaiah Thomas is at home watching on TV like a couch potato, sitting on his sofa with his feet kicked up like he's Garfield. It's just absolutely, asinine to even think that something like that had nothing at all whatsoever to do with Michael Jordan. And in the event that, and I think we might hear some of this
coming up,
maybe on the next episode, that he had nothing to do with that. That's where I think it starts to become even more petty than Isaiah maybe not, being completely honest about everything that happened at that time, per se.
Sure, and he froze Michael out a little bit in the All-Star game, they said.
Exactly. And I think that's where it's an all-time pettiness, if you want to be honest. Two guys who probably have grandchildren by now, somewhere right around 60 years old or so, talking about something that happened over 30 freaking years ago and still just bitter about it. But guess what? That's sports. That's true rivalry. That's something that I love. And without that, there's a lot of rivalry that we've seen between players, programs, organizations, institutions, the whole nine. If it wasn't for that, we may not know rivalries to be the same as we've seen them take place after that all encounter.
Well, they had to pick a college player that year, so that's why they took Christian Laettner. But to me, even if they chose Laettner, Isaiah should have been on the team. John Stockton, I'm sorry. You were a great player. You were fantastic, sis man. You gave it to Karl Malone, one of the best finishers, one of the top 3 power forwards ever to play in the game. But come on, he wasn't close to
Chris Mullin or somebody, for crying out loud.
I'm sorry, what?
I said Chris Mullin or anybody for that matter, for crying out loud.
Isaiah was, to me, not only a top 50 player, but I think he's in the top 25, 20 easily all time. He was that good. He was just barely 6 foot, 6'1". I mean, he was great. And, going back to when he got let off, I think Jordan was only, I agree with you, he was only the piece of the problem, but he wasn't the real problem, because I read in Magic's book that Magic didn't want him on the team. Pippen didn't want him on the team. Karl Malone didn't want him on the team. It was documented in his book that Magic and Isaiah's relationship went sour after the finals, after they faced each other for a while. It's good today, supposedly. It's very good. And it was a tough time. So Magic was sour. Malone was sour. Pippen hated him. So I'm sure they all told Ron Thorne, who was the GM at the time when he started constructing the Bulls and was, Chuck Daly was a coach and he helped construct this USA roster, also the GM of the roster. They decided, you know what? We're not going to upset team chemistry here, put Isaiah on here, and we're going to win the gold medal by 50 million points. And that's exactly what they did. I mean, you had you had players on other teams after the game was over coming up and asking them for their autograph. Do you remember that?
Absolutely, of course.
It was incredible.
To take pictures and autographs and pictures.
Right. Autographs and pictures. Thank you for telling the audience that and reminding me it was not only autographs, it was pictures. Now let's go back to the 97 season because, once I mentioned, Krause breaking up the team, the Patriots, obviously, Tom Brady's not there. It probably has to do with money more than anything. And I think the Patriots just didn't want to pay him. All the other philosophical stuff, and they don't match and all that stuff. I don't believe that. But, Patriots really didn't break up their dynasty. They just got rid of Brady, but it was a big part of the dynasty. So we'll see how they do. But, I was trying to compare that to what the Bulls did today, and there's really not much of a comparison, just maybe a tiny one. But fast forward to this season, the 97-98 season, I mean, Rodman, as we know from the Pistons, explain to the audience the two tales of Dennis Rodman, and then I'll ask you the last question, then we'll have to go.
Well, one thing that
yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I've always loved and embraced about Dennis Rodman is that, life is so short that why waste our time? Life is so short, too short to try to wish so hard to be somebody else that you're not, let alone to be who you are. Life is hard enough already as it is, let alone to try and be two people or multiple. You didn't get that with Dennis. No matter the amount of fame, no matter the amount of money, no matter who he was around, Dennis was always going to be Dennis. I've always looked at it like, how can anyone not love the Worm? Like his work ethic, he fighting over rebounds, with some of his own teammates, diving into the stands for loose balls. I mean, you name it, that's one of the beautiful things about it. And even more so, I'm really happy that the Bulls gave, Dennis a little extra leash and a little extra rope, because, to be able to accept Dennis's role, his personality, his edge, all of those things just is the makeup of a Rodman. Everybody, even to this day, people will tell you all the time, this kind of goes back to Draymond Green, even in some cases. Everybody needs a Dennis Rodman style or Dennis Rodman type on their team. You heard Michael Jordan say it many of times, and especially over the course of this documentary, that he was one of the smartest players that he's ever played with. And I personally don't think that,
Jordan would say that lightly.
And that too, but not only that, but I'm not even surprised, because he was such a smart guy. While everybody else is doing something different, maybe cigars or lines or smoking weed or doing this and doing that. And that's not to say that Dennis isn't a saint by any means, but Dennis, you can catch Dennis at Oakland Mall out of Detroit, playing the pinball machine, playing video games with tons of little kids just around him, just interacting, playing. And I know that sounds weird probably today.
No, it's true because it's true. I was just going to say, because Dennis was a different person when he was with the Pistons than he was with the Bulls. He had strict father figure in Chuck Daly because he never had a father figure. His dad was AWOL. So, Chuck Daly was strict. It was his father figure. He loved Chuck Daly more than anything in the world. Chuck loved him as a son. And when they went apart, Dennis went to the Bulls. and, became, eventually, he went to several other teams before the Bulls, but he became that wild and free guy when he got with Phil Jackson and the Bulls because, well, Phil was kind of a wild and free guy, according to the documentaries, when they, when they showed what he was doing, like you mentioned earlier in the program, during his days. So that's why those two got along, but it was a totally different relationship.
For sure. And not only that, I thought it was funny how Michael had mentioned that, once Dennis got back and guys are going to have to start running and so forth, doing some of those Indian drills. I think they were called the Indian drill, whatever they were called, but saying, that he really didn't think that was fair because he had done nothing wrong. He didn't go out of state getting a vacation where he felt like he was probably the most deserving. And then Dennis comes back and now everybody gets the same treatment and have to run these drills. And Michael felt like, well, now I'm caught up in the get Dennis Rodman back in shape drill, all to find out that it was Dennis Rodman who ended up being the leader of those drills. So,
right.
I mean, he was just one of those guys that just needed a little bit of a getaway for a second to come back and have his mind clear.
Oh, there's no question about it. And speaking of getting your mind cleared and leaving, and this is the last question, Dennis Rodman decided to leave on vacation, and this blew me away in the middle of the season. This was in January. Of course, Scottie Pippen at the beginning of that season decided not to have his surgery earlier, which Jordan said he was very selfish and he should have, he was ticked off with Krause about his contract, and Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf told him not to sign the contract. He did it anyway, so that's how he got stuck in his situation. But back to Rodman, Rodman in the middle of the season wanted to go on vacation in January, and here he is going to Michael Jordan and the Bulls organization. Phil Jackson, Bill's organization are going to let him, but they consult Michael Jordan before they even make the decision. Like Jordan's in charge. What organization is going to ask a player to do something to let another player do? What is? I can see what is wrong with that in so many pictures. What a story. There's no way I can see that happening. And Jordan said, I remember the story Jordan said. This is so wild. He said, how about 48 hours? And Dennis said, well, if that's all you're giving me, I'll take it. And I remember Jordan saying, wait a minute, I need a damn vacation too. And if anybody needs a vacation, it's me. But I remember,
that's right.
And Rodman said, yep, I'll be right back. And the story was that everybody said they went and got Rodman in Vegas. That's not true. He went across over to Rodman's apartment and pulled him out of the bed. And he was in bed with his girlfriend at the time. And who he was seeing, I forget who it was, some famous lady.
Carmen Electra.
Thank you for that. Seeing Carmen Electra, got him out of bed, said, okay, your vacation's over. You're coming back to play basketball. Deshaun, I can't believe it. What are your thoughts on all of that, man?
Well, first and foremost, I know that we seem kind of confused as to what organization would have to go through another man just to allow another man to be able to go and do something on his own free will. But if I had to guess, that would probably be any organization that LeBron James plays for. That's my first answer.
Wow.
Secondly to that, just to hear, just in regards to Michael Jordan, popping up and going to get Dennis, I can only imagine. I would have loved to have been a fly on that wall when the door opened up. And knowing that Michael had to come pull this man out of his bed and get him back on the flight, get him back. And for him to perform the way that he did coming back, it's so Dennis Rodman-like, it doesn't even make any sense. That's just a true testament to Dennis Rodman's work ethic. He knew what he needed. Phil knew exactly what he needed. And I recall hearing from some people, that were very close to the organization at that time, with saying, hey, before they even brought Dennis in, what do you think about bringing Dennis in? And there were so many things, obviously, with Dennis's life going on at that time as to before they bring him in, what the overall thoughts were. And I recall hearing this story where Michael said, bring him in. Let me deal with Dennis. We can use Dennis and so, because we know that Dennis is going to be Dennis. He had a sit down talk with Dennis and told Dennis, whoever you're going to be off the floor, it's absolutely none of my business. But when it's time to lace him up and it's time to go, he never had to worry about Dennis not giving it his all. And I just think that just goes to show everything that we're seeing in this documentary between Phil, Scotty, Michael, content between these 10 hours that they're giving. There's so much more content that they really had to cut out, not because they didn't feel like it was suitable for television, but because there was no way they were going to be able to jam pack it all the way in. Who knows with all of the content what we would have been watching on the tube.
That's one heck of a comment. And it's almost like Michael Jordan, the player, was running the organization. I mean, it's
sure.
like when we say with kids, inmates are running the asylum. And Michael Jordan ran the Bulls. Now, you made a comment right before I let you go, and it floored me. You said today LeBron James would make that the organization would go to LeBron James before, like, if he was with the Lakers and the GM said, hey, Rob Pelinka, the current GM of the Lakers, who used to play with the Fab Five at Michigan, by the way, came off the bench, said, hey, LeBron, the power forward for the Lakers, the star, who's I'm forgetting his name. Why I'm losing my mind. The power forward.
Anthony Davis?
Yes, Anthony Davis needs a vacation. Anthony needs a vacation. I just can't see Rob Pelinka going up to LeBron James and saying, can he take a vacation? But you can tell me why.
If LeBron James says, or even comes close to threatening not being a Los Angeles Laker anymore, because at this point, LeBron knows what he needs to bring a championship. When you think about the Los Angeles Lakers, that is essentially the Los LeBron Lakers at this point. The Los Angeles LeBrons, pretty much at this point. They are surrounded, and he is the face of not just that franchise, but he is the face of this NBA, essentially. So from that standpoint, what LeBron needs, LeBron will get. If he says that it is in our best interest to give that vacation for Anthony Davis, there's not a question in my mind. Why? Because if LeBron James tells Rob Pelinka that I don't want X player on the roster starting next year or tonight, then that player won't be in uniform on that night. I don't doubt that.
Wow. A lot of people didn't think that that player would have that kind of stature. And I didn't think so neither. But after listening to you with LeBron James, that's very possible. Deshaun, you were fantastic.
Think about it.
Go ahead.
LeBron James, when he was in Miami, told them to draft Shabazz Napier coming off of a national championship. They went out and did exactly that, and LeBron James bolted for the Cleveland Cavaliers after that. So Shabazz Napier has LeBron James to thank for having a job in the NBA, essentially.
Wow. Yeah, you know what? Your parallel, I love it. I really didn't think there was a current player, but after listening to you, I agree with your take. LeBron James is that guy in today's world. Deshaun, you were fantastic today, Deshaun. I really appreciate it, my friend. I've got to bring you back on next time and talk about The Last Dance again when we get a chance a couple episodes down. I hope you're down on coming back to the show and talking about it, because I can't wait to get your take. And also, I'll ask you later on down the line, who really is the GOAT in the NBA? but we'll leave everyone there because we'll leave them thirsty for more. And I'll have you back on the show sometime down the road very soon. And I thank you so much for coming on today. It was fantastic talking to you. And best of luck to you and your family, and stay safe.
Thanks so much. You as well. That'll be a pretty easy question to answer. At Tates Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS on Twitter as well as on Instagram. Hashtag Where Basketball Lives. Hashtag The Basketball Savant. Got a really awesome podcast. Going to be uploading an episode later on today. You can find that anywhere you find your favorite podcast. Spotify, Red Circle, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, the whole nine. Just put in that search box, that little magnifying glass, Take, and you can find all of the content there. I like to think is pretty informational and educational.
You know what, Deshaun, the next time, every time you get a podcast, send it to me on Twitter send it to me on Twitter, and I'll retweet it out for you. Tell everybody where they can get you on Twitter again.
At Tates Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS. Everything basketball. If we're talking international basketball, the collegiate level, high school, AAU, NBA, if it's wheelchair basketball, for crying out loud, you can find it right there wherever that ball is bouncing. 94 feet long, 50 feet wide, 22 feet, 1 1/4 inches out on the perimeter. And if that rim is 10 feet tall and they're playing basketball on the moon, give me an astronaut outfit, a globe helmet, give me credentials to the moon, because that's where we're going for some hoops.
We might have to go there for the hoops. It might be the only safe place to play with this coronavirus. I mean, goodness golly, man. Deshaun, thanks a lot. I'm glad you said all that at the end, and we'll talk to you down the road, my friend.
Thank you much, TC. Great job.
Y'all, thank you. You too, my friend. You were a fantastic guest. That's Deshaun Tate, our NCAA prep and NBA insider here on ATL Prime Sports. This is another special edition of Quarters Corner here on ATL Prime Sports. Tuesday on Quarters Corner on ATL Prime Sports. May 5th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll have Dante Fowler, former professional baseball player who played with Barry Bonds, Jeff Kent, and the San Francisco Giants. He'll be on it Tuesday, May 5th, this coming Tuesday at 4 p.m. here on ATL Prime Sports. You don't want to miss it. Tomorrow, and every Friday, I'm part of the Philadelphia Phillies alumni show on Blog Talk Radio. You can go get that, www.blogtalkradio.com, or you can call and listen in at 1-347-205-9631. Myself, Mark Mancini, Lenny, and the former Philly Warren Brewster, who I've interviewed on this show, and also Lenny Melnick. So, and we're going to have a special guest tomorrow, also former Major League player Randy Lurch. So he will join the show. It'll be a packed show. It'll start at 12:30 Eastern and go to 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Also tomorrow, I'm on a radio show down in Vero Beach, Florida. That'll be Chris Pirtle's show. That show is called the Sports Junkies. And let me see, I will get that for you. Let me get that radio station for you. Sorry about that. I had it up and it disappeared. I will bring it back, and here it is. He is Chris Pirtle, my friend, is host of the Sports Junkies on WAXE FM 107.9 and 1370 AM. It is an iHeart radio station. You can get it on iHeart Radio. I'll be a guest there tomorrow from 11:30 p.m. till noon, all times Eastern. That's it for everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you on this channel on Tuesday, May 5th, with our guest, Dante Fowler, from the San Francisco Giants. Have a great weekend, everybody.